Thanks everybody for attending the meeting for the planning on Tuesday the 6th of February. My name is Councillor June Molyneux. I'm the chair of the committee. The vice chair isn't here tonight, unfortunately. He had an accident at work and has got a bad disc, so he's laid up at home. Please note that the meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. If you're in attendance as a member of the public who is registered to speak, please note you'll have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. A legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if you're in the middle of making a point, wind up within a few seconds and then finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone will be muted. To assist in following the evening's proceedings, a pack's been prepared and is available online, and it contains each item's report, plans, presentation slides and any addendum notes. After officers have presented the report and speakers have made representations, I will invite members to make any comments. When you want to speak, please raise your hand, and when invited to speak, remember to use your microphone, like I didn't, and reference the paragraph number, which will allow everyone to follow. Please keep in mind that some people require closed captions and maybe lip reading to follow the proceedings. So please speak slowly and clearly and try to keep your hands away from your mouth, please. It doesn't help. Please can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarms sound, please exit the way you came in because it's real. With that, apologies. I've had apologies from councillors Hilton, G and Derbyshire. Councillors Adrian Lowe and Arjun Singh are substitutes. Declarations of any interests. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters contained in the agenda. If you have such an interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed, but you do, however, have the same rights to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right and then leave immediately. In either case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Item 2, minutes of the meeting of the 16th of January. Can somebody move those, please? Seconded. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Planning applications to be determined. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for the planning applications are as follows. The officers will summarise the report, and then registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes, apart from a ward councillor who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I will grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. With that, we're moving on to item 3A. Land adjacent to Blainscough Hall, pages 7 to 50, with an update on your addendum. Daniel's going to present this item. The officer recommendation remains that the application is approved subject to conditions. I have a number of registered speakers. I have an objector, Kane Griffith, ward councillor Ryan Towers, ward councillor Julia Berry, agent Charlotte Fowler. Daniel, do you want to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. The application site forms part of a wider parcel of land designated as safeguarded land under Local Plan Policy BNE3. The site covers approximately 5.5 hectares and is located adjacent to the settlement boundary. Outline consent was granted at appeal for up to 123 dwellings. The current reserve matters application proposes 118. 35 of which is 30%, would be for affordable dwellings, consisting of 1-bedroom apartments and 2- and 3-bedroom 2-storey properties. Open market dwellings would consist of 3-, 4- and 5-bed properties, of detached and semi-detached properties. The layout of the open market and affordable are spread across the site, given a mix of different house types. The outline appeal considered the principle of development to be acceptable. It also considered that access to the site, which would be from the north within the centre. The remaining matters for consideration of this application relate to appearance, layout, scale, and landscaping. In terms of surface water and foul water, the outline consent imposed a number of conditions relating further details to be submitted for foul and surface water. The application was submitted with a broad strategy to how to manage foul and surface water, and they were considered by the local lead flood authority, and United Utilities, and the broad principle of that was considered acceptable. The conditions that were imposed on the outline still need to be discharged, so there will be an acceptable scheme that will be then again considered by the LLFA and the UU. With regard to highways, there were some amendments that were made to the scheme and further clarifications, which resulted in highways having no objection to the proposal. In the consideration of trees on the site, again, there has been a small amendment to the proposal to reorientate some dwellings to the western part of the site to retain some of the trees that were previously proposed to be lost. Overall, there will be an uplift of trees on the site, and therefore it's considered acceptable in that regard. In terms of neighbouring impact, cross-sections were provided at various points on the northern boundary where the proposal meets existing dwellings. This reflected some change in levels, and the relationship between the proposed dwellings and the existing has taken account for allowed greater distances for that. On that basis, and subject to a condition within the recommendation for finished floor levels, it's considered the proposal will not result in significant impact to neighbouring amenity by either overlooking or overbearing. The character of the area the character of the proposal broadly reflects the development to the north, which is also approximately 10 to 15 years old. Finally, a Section 106 agreement was agreed at the appeal, and this would still be enforceable on this condition as well. So would the outline conditions imposed. For the reasons outlined in the report and subject to conditions, the recommendation is approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Kane?
Thank you, Chair. I live at 95 Grange Drive and also represent a neighbour who lives at 64 Manor Way. Our properties are positioned on the northern boundary of the site, and we have concerns regarding separation distances, boundary treatment, and a specific drainage issue. Plots 103 through to 106 are to consist of 4 detached homes, which will be built with a ground floor level almost 2.5 metres higher than existing field levels. Please refer to Addendum Appendices 2 and 3. Plot 105 does not comply with the LPA supplementary design guidance, as proposed ground floor windows would have unrestricted views into an existing ground floor habitable room. In addition, plots 103 through to 106 would have extensive patio areas. These span the width of each plot, project out by up to 4.5 metres, and a surface level almost 2 metres higher than those at number 95. These clearly have not been given due consideration as implied in paragraph 66. Surely, given the scale and height of these patios, it would be more appropriate to consider them as terraces. Section 3 of the LPA's supplementary planning document makes it clear terraces are problematic, and, in this case, there would be unrestricted views into gardens and multiple ground floor habitable rooms. Along the boundary of number 64, there is a varying change in level. Here, a single cross-section drawing has been produced by the applicant at the most favourable position. This is not representative and does not take account of a significant level change at the rear of the property. Therefore, how can any meaningful assessment into residents' privacy and amenity be undertaken by the LPA to ensure compliance with policy? The officer report states in paragraph 68 there will be no detrimental impact on neighbours' amenity. However, I assert the proposals in the current format will cause harm by virtue of overlooking and overbearing due to BNE1 not being fully imposed. What's worse, this is before the potential impact of any future permitted development. Please refer to Addendum Appendix 1. An existing ditch runs along the northern boundary of the site and is not shown on any of the applicant's drawings. Paragraph 66 states rear gardens of plots 103 through to 105 are to slope towards existing properties. The applicant has not clarified how surface water will be managed here. This uncertainty in the design and written confirmation that the LLFA has not visited the site is unsettling. It is therefore assumed the LLFA are unaware of the applicant's intention. In the spirit of cooperation, we wrote to the applicant on numerous occasions with an offer to withdraw our objections if the following were to be incorporated: drainage to convey surface water away from existing properties, screen planting along the applicant's boundary to ensure some level of privacy is maintained, and finally, consideration to an enhanced fencing specification. We have received no response from Story Homes, which clearly demonstrates they have no genuine desire to engage with neighbours or address our concerns. I encourage members to consider conducting a site visit so that the magnitude and scale of what is being proposed in the vicinity of our properties can be fully appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Ward Councillor, also resident of Coppell, Round Towers. I've had a number of concerns brought to me, raised around residents, from residents on Grange Drive and Manaway, around the lack of meaningful consultation on the development. Initial letters are supposed to be sent out from Story Homes, and these weren't received. Several questions have been posed and raised by residents, and they've failed to have a response. I've got no reason to doubt these reports, which would leave the consultation obligations incomplete. Also, secondary, the concerns that have been raised around the roundabout on Spenmore Lane. As a resident of Coppell and the councillor there, it's something that I'm very aware of every time I drive through on my way to work. An extra 133 houses being developed there will significantly increase the traffic going on this key kind of commuter link through to Wigan. Traffic is already an issue. Anybody who lives in the area knows it's a hot spot, particularly around commuter times, but also around school pick-up and drop-off. The visuals are bad when you're coming out onto that roundabout. This cannot be mitigated through widening of roads because it's too narrow. You've got bikes on the pavements, you've got pedestrians visiting shops, going to the school. It's a busy area. All of this increases the real risk of accidents. Mitigations that have been proposed for residents do not mitigate that risk enough, and I can perfectly see why. There's likely going to be accidents there, and it will be the residents of Coppell who have to pick up the pieces. I've also had a number of visits to the residents' properties on Manaway and down on Grange Drive. An issue which has been constantly raised is that has just been acutely put across, and that's around privacy. If the development goes ahead, from the drawings of the development, they back onto the properties from number 14 to 95 on Grange Drive. The distance between the development and the current properties and the planned height of the development would mean visibility directly into the property's living areas. This proposal of a fence of 1.8 metres high would not screen the view, which has a real impact on residents' right to privacy. I'd like to follow up with the proposal I proposed earlier around site visits due to these privacy concerns. There's also potential mitigations which have been outlined previously, where the boundary lines could be looked to be changed, but also increasing trees and hedges. This would also support positive biodiversity increase. Because of the traffic hazards and because of the stretch on services in Coppell, I hope the committee propose a recommendation of rejection, but at the very minimum that they propose for extra site visits and extra mitigations. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Berry?
I wish to raise the concerns of residents, which I feel can only be satisfactorily addressed by a site visit. Please come along to for yourselves to see and understand the impact of some of these issues that this layout that the Story Homes is presented. The crux of it is, I was aware of a drainage ditch at the outline planning stage. That diagram no longer exists, doesn't feature in tonight's model, and the ditch doesn't feature at all. And what we see is the levels of land are being raised to extraordinary heights. And the consequence of that, let's go back to the ditch and the impact of runoff. That ditch becomes significant. Water finds its own way. Of course, it will be filled in, but with those raised levels, it will be the runoff water will be more extreme, and residents will be the existing residents' houses at least will be have to put up with, endure flood coming into their gardens and houses. You really need to go along to ensure you understand this issue thoroughly. It's an emerging issue throughout Chorley and other districts, with more development going on in places you never expected to be developing. Can I ask a question of planning officers? You know, have you been alerted to this issue with the ditch? You know, have you attended with the flood response team from Lancashire County Council? Because you haven't, perhaps you need to come along on that particular site visit. Please, I implore you, the site visit is absolutely imperative, because I've absolutely no confidence that that due diligence has been paid with this report. Residents have accepted dislocated footpaths and trees and hedges being uprooted. And again, please come along and see for yourself the need for extra planting, preferably native. See the excessive intrusion of privacy that is going to happen if these levels aren't addressed. And I'm also a bit disappointed that there was no archaeological response as far as a survey, because really that evidence was critical also to the future of that site. The burial mounds that exist around Blainscough Hall are of acute interest to the heritage, to the people, to the residents of Coppell, and now wonder why we build up rather than dig down. We really need to see that report to see that there was no emerging issue. Like I say, we've accepted most things, but what is really sad is the lack of timely response. Actually, even from our own council, we know they've got capacity issues, and it's the state in most places, even at Lancashire County Council. But Story Homes, who were pledging to listen, have obviously failed to, by failing. Even today I've written to, you know, thinking I'd get a quick email back to say that would get round to responding to just a couple of residents. I know there's more that haven't been responded to. So I'd actually like to support Councillor Tower's refusal note, and please think seriously about coming on this site visit. I think some of these documents, the information are premature because they've not been finalised. We've moved away from something. Even the Ecology Service said that they're not adequately equipped to comment on some things, and some of the stuff that's come from Lancashire County Council is quite honestly just vague, just very, very, very short. I'd like to finish talking about road safety, so just say danger. The danger of bin lorries, the danger of construction on that site, the danger of trying to get yourself off the roundabout or even accessing the estate next to 2 primary schools. Lancashire County Council are failing at the moment to be able to recruit a lollipop lady, you know, with safe to see children across the road. And we refuse this, remember, we refuse this, and shame on the government inspector that turned things round at government level. Those problems and concerns of residents exist still. They've been consistent and persistent, and they've not been listened to. Please listen today and implore you. Please support a site visit and refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's the agent, Charlotte Fowler, and you've got up to 5 minutes.
Good evening, members. I'm Charlotte Fowler, the planning agent for this application. Thank you to officers for the officers' report and the presentation to committee. As we've heard, this application is for reserve matters for the layout, scale, appearance and landscaping of a residential development which has been granted outline planning permission in February 2022. The principle of the development, including details of access, traffic impact, was determined at the outline stage, leaving the detailed design only for consideration now. In summary of the planning submission and officer's report, the proposed development is acceptable for the following reasons. Firstly, the application will deliver a mix of homes from smaller first-time homes through to larger family homes on a committed site, contributing to supply and choice in Chorley. Secondly, the development will deliver 35 affordable homes, £1.3 million in SIL contributions, which 15% will be allocated to Coppell Parish Council, £188,000 to playing pitches, £16,000 to local play areas and a contribution to secondary schools. The layout incorporates public open space, improvements to the public rights of way, significant tree hedgerow planting, native species planting, wetland, wildflower grasslands, wetland habitat creation and bat and bird boxes. There are no technical objections from any of the statutory consultees. With regards to residential amenity, we know there have been concerns raised, but the planning officers are satisfied that there will be no unacceptable impact on residential amenity, given the distances between existing and proposed homes, which take account of level changes, so that the 2 metre difference has meant that the houses are located a greater distance away from existing houses. And with regards to number 95, that was shown on one of the photographs, that the view is to the blank side elevation of that property. With regard to drainage, we know that that's been raised as a concern with regards to the ditch. This isn't shown on the proposed layout plans because it will be infilled as part of the development, and there will be land drainage to the gardens, which will go into the surface water drainage scheme, which is designed to flow out to Tanyard Brook, designed to accommodate a 100-year flood events, rainfall events, plus an allowance for climate change. So the strategy is there and has been agreed by the LFA, and as the officer said, that will follow a very detailed design stage to be agreed by a condition. So overall, we hope that you can support the application and vote to approve this reserve matters submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You wanted to come back, didn't you, Dean?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to clarify for members, that the site benefits from an outline planning consent, and that includes access and highways. So access and highways have been found to be acceptable at outline stage, and they're not matters that are for consideration at this point with this reserve matters application. This relates purely to appearance, landscaping, scale and layout, and highways and access are approved. It's just so members are clear on that point. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, over to you, members. Councillor Whitaker, Councillor France.
The ward councillors identified. Originally, we turned this down application because it was safeguarded land. Subsequently, it was approved on appeal. So there's going to be houses there, and we're not going to change that. We're not going to change that for anybody's benefit. But one of the things that was talked about by the residents, and when you looked at some of the sketches and the elevations, you can see how tall some of these properties are in terms of overlooking. And it's all right saying there are minimum distance and so on and so forth, but there's 118 houses going on there, and I just think, okay, we won't be able to see the houses because they're not built yet, but at least we can judge how far they are from the existing properties and maybe make a decision then about whether that is a reasonable assessment. I think the resident talked about trying to make some compromises with storey homes, which has not been, as I understood it, not been taken up. But I'd certainly like to have a look at this site. I know a couple fairly well, but I'd like to have a look at this site, and I'd be happy to propose a site visit, Chair.
Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Just some concerns about comments in paragraph 72 about the integral garages. We're actually building houses with integral garages that won't fit cars in. They have commented the proposed integral garages in accordance with LCC highway standards do not meet the minimum internal dimensions to be considered usable car parking space. LCC has assessed the proposal dwellings with integral garages and are of the opinion that the integral garages may result in on-street parking with the internal layout. Were this on-street parking to occur, it is LCC's highways opinion that this would not cause unacceptable risk to highway safety. I just don't like the idea that we're actually building houses with integral garages that won't fit cars in. Thank you.
Do you want to come back, Dan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, so Highways did comment that from their standards, the garage was undersized. So, and this just relates to integral garages on the application site. Not all the properties have integral garages. There's only a small number of those that do. In terms of the sizes of the garages, they range from 2.4 metres to 2.5 metres in width and 5.1 metres to 5.8 metres in length. The Highway Authority are wanting a garage of, I believe, 3 metres in width and 6 metres in length. Generally, a small garage is considered to be 2.4 metres by 4.9 metres. So, and a medium is about 2.7 to 5.5. So they are broadly in line with what we would consider a garage to be as a sort of standard size. We consider, given the small number of them that are on that lower end, and given the small number of properties that actually have integral garages that are what the Highway Authority deemed to be too small, we don't think that would have a harmful impact on the parking of the area. The properties do at least have 2 off-road parking spaces as well. So on that basis, we consider it to be acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Councillor Platt.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, and Daniel, do you mean the ones with the integral garages have 2 spaces also, or do you mean one of the spaces is the integral garage? I can't say that word, sorry. The attached garage.
Yes, the ones that have integral garages also do have 2 parking to the front as well.
Okay. Anybody out there? Councillor Southern.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's mention being made about the distances and the height of land here. Am I to understand that some of these properties have actually moved backwards to accommodate for that? We've moved their line of sight backwards. Would that be right, Daniel?
So, do you mean if there's been amendments to the proposal during the scheme?
Yeah, because the issue obviously is the overlooking side of that when you're looking forwards in terms of privacy. And I appreciate there's a difference in height of land, and I appreciate the design of the actual properties proposed. Was that actually move these back? Am I understand that correct?
From the original layout, yes, there was one part of it that has been moved further back. So what you can see on this slide on the screen, the property on the right is number 95, which has spoken today. So the cross section that was taken was from plot 105, which would sit slightly forward of that property. And then plot 104 would sit alongside, would face that gable of the property. And then 103 would be further along as well.
Right.
So if you can see the gable of the property there, there's currently a fence that goes along that boundary, and you can just see the white rectangle of the window. That's the window that's represented on the cross-section that is within your addendum. So the distance from the patio to the property that's shown in the cross-section, that's actually the property that's in front.
Right.
So the one that sits alongside, because of the orientation of the proposal and the existing, they slightly move further away. So the patio, as you go further northeast, so the plots that are then getting closer to
your eye line drops down, obviously,
are moving slightly further away.
Right.
If you can also see in the cross section that was provided, there's a man that's been placed on the patio area. That's broadly where you would generally see a first floor as well.
Yeah.
And for a first floor property to a side gable, you would generally look around 10 to 12 metres. So we're at a greater distance than that.
Was it 15, was it go back? What was the distance, sorry? Was it 15 more back? 15 metres?
The proposed is 15 metres, the patio to the side. And again, that's plot 105, which is slightly forward. So then 104, which is along the side of the gable, is set slightly further back again.
Right, thank you.
So the proposed dwelling is set further back, but the patio also angles slightly away as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Marwood.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Platt.
We're a bit hamstrung, aren't we? The access, the highway, we turned it all down before. It's gone to appeal. We've lost it. So as Councillor Whittaker said, houses are going to go on there. My feeling is that we've done as much as we possibly can. The technical details for the drainage are still to be agreed. I think that's right. So I rely on the best judgment of our officers to make sure that that drainage is appropriate. And sadly, I just cannot find genuine planning reasons to turn it down, not ones that would not go to appeal and just be thrown out as many of our appeals have done in the past. And it doesn't matter if we're in special measures, we're not, if we still felt it was genuine, we would do it. But in this case, I can't come to any real conclusion that I can turn it down. Thank you.
Councillor Platt.
Thanks. My question was, somebody mentioned the right to privacy. I'm just wondering if any of the properties are so close to the line that they should be. You were saying about so many metres away from the neighbours that are already built. Do any of them come close, and what's the closest? Or are they all very similarly so many metres away? I'm going to get a ruler out.
So you can see the layout on the slide in front of you.
Yeah.
So the top right-hand part was
Yeah.
what we were discussing before, which is closer to number 5. They're the ones that sit slightly higher than the properties to the north. So we have then, if we go from further along to the west of that, the properties that sit along there. The properties that sit along here have gardens approximately about 10 metre gardens, and there is the 21 metre interface between broadly along here, which is what we would generally expect. So then when we move further west, we're then looking at properties that are sitting gable or off angle to some of these properties along here. So we've considered the relationship between the proposal and the existings, because you've got properties that sit along the site like here, with a new dwelling along here. For example, this one here, given the angle of this property to this one, it is set sufficiently enough back that you're not going to get overbearing, and also because of the angle and the distance, you're not going to have overlooking. So on each individual point, we've made an assessment to see whether or not there would be any overlooking or any overbearing, particularly when you have these two properties here, which sit slightly different to the ones that are further here. And again, we've had cross sections shown across this part of the site that show the levels as well, to ensure that there isn't a greater distance in levels, and therefore we don't need that greater distance that we've seen elsewhere.
Just going back on 17 Manor Way, which is the small property at the end of that Manor Way road, closest to the... Are those two little boxes underneath garages?
Yes, they're single-storey garages.
Right, so that obviously they don't have bedroom windows or something like that on. So the nearest property to that is the one that is just left of those garages. That's probably one of the closest on the whole map, but because it's diagonal, it's probably a little different for the windows view, isn't it?
Yes, so you have actually one to the left, which is one there.
Yeah.
So number 17, that's the front of the property.
Yeah.
And then you have one to the right, which is that one there, and this is the garden of that property. So we've looked at the distance between this property and this property, both in terms of distance of it overshadowing or overbearing, but also the angle of the properties as well, to ensure that there isn't that overlooking.
Okay.
So the front, obviously this is overlooked anyway, but again, it's to make sure that that property, the proposed dwelling, isn't close enough that's going to be an overbearing impact. But the ones that you do have alongside it and closer to their boundary as single-storey garages.
Right.
So that impact's not.
So each
significant.
one's had an assessment, really, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely. Thanks.
Okay. Any more? Councillor Marwood, did you propose the officer recommendation? I thought you did. House didn't agree with me. Sorry? I know. It's Councillor Owen. I was going to get.
Oh, that's better. No, there's still a bit of feedback, but I'm content, Chair, to second Councillor Morwood's proposition to go with the officer recommendation and all the conditions, including those on the addendum that have amended certain conditions. I concur we are where we are in terms of some of the issues have been that was the boat has sailed, if I can use an analogy, because obviously outline planning permission was granted at appeal, so that took away some of the issues. If I bring members' attention to paragraph 66 of the report and also paragraph 68 of the report, that deals and states that there's no unacceptably detrimental impact on the amenity of existing neighbouring properties, and paragraph 66 actually highlights, I think, the point that Councillor Platt's made in terms of the distance between other properties in the neighbourhood. I obviously note paragraph 70 of the report in terms of what the conditions were granted on appeal and the need for like a construction plan, etc. So the final point I'd make, Chair, is paragraph 76 of the report in terms about drainage. And I'm satisfied that with the suitable conditions that's been proposed, I'm happy to second officer recommendation, Chair.
Thank you. So I've got a proposer and a seconder for the officer recommendation, a proposed for a site visit with no seconder. Well, I was just getting to it, but you don't let me. I just said I've had a proposal for it, but no seconder. So that gives somebody a chance to come in.
Thank you,
Tash.
Chair. Thank you, Chair. So in respect of the reserve matters relating to land adjacent to Blainscough Hall, Blainscough Lane Couple, members have decided to grant that application, and it's in relation to the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, comprising the erection of 118 dwellings, including internal access roads, public open space, parking, associated infrastructure, and that is subject to all the conditions within both reports. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If anybody's come just for that and you wish to go, you can, please do now. We'll not make you sit through the rest. Okay. Okay. It is, yeah. I don't think there is. No. Well, we're just exploring that. Probably not. Yeah. I've lost my papers now in all this. Ah, there it is. Land west of the Owls, Bluestone Lane, Mawdesley, pages 51 to 80, with an update on your addendum. Ian's going to present this item, recommendation, reserve matters, consent granted for the details of appearance, etc. I have two registered speakers, the objector, Keith Ruffley, and the agent, Zoran Barros. Ian, off you go.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks reserved matters consent for the details of appearance, landscaping and scale in relation to the erection of a detached dwelling pursuant to an outline planning permission that was granted in September 2022, following a resolution made by the Planning Committee. The application site is located in the Greenbelt on Bluestone Lane in Mawdesley and comprises an open paddock area between the Owls to the east and 3 residential properties to the west. The principle of development has been established through the grant of outline planning permission, whilst access has also been approved. The proposed dwelling will be of a traditional design style, faced in red brick with a roof laid in slates that would incorporate some features of architectural interest. The dwelling will be set back within the site to face the highway and will be of a similar height to Bluestone Barn, which lies to the east. The dwelling would sit within a mixed street scene comprising buildings of different form and scale, whilst there are examples of more recent dwelling types in the locality. It's considered, therefore, that the proposed dwelling would not be harmful to the appearance of the street scene and would not be significantly detrimental to the character of the area in this context. There would be an adequate degree of separation between the proposed dwelling and existing dwellings, such that there will be no unacceptable harm to the amenity of any nearby neighbouring occupiers. Landscaping will be included to the frontage, which would help to soften the visual impacts of the development, whilst the inclusion of trees, shrubs and hedges would provide biodiversity benefits. A flood risk assessment and drainage strategy has been submitted in response to a condition attached to the outline planning permission. This proposes to direct surface water to underground drainage pipes that discharge directly to a perforated ring soakaway, with an overflow that connects to an existing surface water drain that discharges into the watercourse nearby. The proposed drainage strategy has been accepted by United Utilities and meets the terms of the condition that's attached to the outline consent. Overall, it's recommended that this reserve matters application is approved, subject to the conditions set out on the addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Have we got Keith, please? Yeah. Off you go.
We live behind this plot on Dart Lane. We are aware that due to infill regulations, something will be built on this plot, but this design is not the answer for 2 main reasons. Firstly, from a height point of view, as it towers above the 2 closest houses by 4 metres or 13 feet from a street view perspective. Secondly, from a surface water drainage point of view, we were informed by Chorley Borough Council Planning that it is the responsibility of the developer not to make the existing flooding situation worse, but this design fails in this goal for the following 3 reasons. 1, the engineer has not considered the land survey applied with the application and consequently, A, has designed the soakaway manhole with the inlet and cover sticking out of the ground. B, the required soakaway storage volume of 5 metres cubed is not achieved, and at best it is only 2.5 metres cubed, meaning that the high level overflow will be flowing all the time during any rain. C, the fall in the drive is currently only indicated by arrows running across the plot from left to right into verges, and yet the existing ground in this direction is virtually flat. The predominant fall in the drive area is from the house to Bluestone Lane at 1 in 22. Consequently, the water will flow with the steepest gradient and end up on the existing highway in contradiction of LCC recommendations and increasing flooding in the low spot on Dart Lane outside our house. Point 2. The design only allows for 10% urban creep, but because there is no garage allowed with the current proposal, a double garage would add circa 30% and future possible extensions even more. So 10% urban creep is inadequate for this situation. Point 3. The higher level overflow from the soakaway is not a good design principle because it is only likely to be used during a storm situation, which will then add to the existing flooding problem downstream behind our house. Notwithstanding this, the level of this overflow is not stated in the design, so it is unclear how much soakaway storage is actually allowed below or before the overflow comes into use. Basically, if the soakaway doesn't work, or the surface water from the drive ends up on Bluestone Lane, It will add to the existing flooding problems in the front and behind our house on Dirt Lane.
Thank you. Thank you. Have I got Zoran, please? Can you switch in?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present at the committee meeting to support the project. This application is for a discharge conditions condition submission following approval of an outline planning application in September 22 for a new detached dwelling on Bluestone Lane. With reference to the proposals, the extent of the development is contained within the existing boundary and complies with a neighbour overlooking guidelines. First floor windows to the east elevation obscured to afford greater privacy to the neighbours, with principal views from the dwelling now being only to the front and rear of the property. The scale and appearance of the proposed new dwelling is appropriate to the location. Flanking the site and the Owls development is a two-storey workshop studio annexed to Chase Cottage. Monsall, a dwelling immediately adjacent to the west of the site, and to the rear of Chase Cottage is a two-storey dwelling, whilst to the east exists Bluestone Barn, which is also a two-storey dwelling, as highlighted on the street scene drawing produced during the planning application process. The new dwelling is also set back approximately 4.5 metres from the frontage of the single-storey live-work units adjacent to minimise an impact on the street scene. The Owls development will therefore screen much of the building when approaching Mawdesley from the east, and Chase Cottage will do the same in the opposite direction. The front garden will also be landscaped with trees and low-level planting to provide privacy to the dwelling. In order to preserve an appearance appropriate to the setting, the proposed dwelling takes architectural reference cues from the Bluestone Barn. This includes fenestration pattern and the selection of appropriate walling and roofing materials to reflect and to be in sympathy with the local vernacular. With regard to the surface water drainage system, the design proposals have been undertaken by GSA, a well-established, recognised local civil engineer. In light of the comments raised by the community, the engineers kindly provide additional information to allay neighbours' concerns, and trust the additional information in the drainage strategy will address many of the queries raised. In particular, we wish to highlight that the soakaway test undertaken on site in accordance with BRE 365 demonstrated a successful result, thereby allowing the possibility of surface water to be dealt with on site. This localised approach will help avoid adding to the issue of flash flooding in the area, and will be constructed in accordance with strict building regulation requirements. We move that the proposed new dwelling comply fully with both national and local planning policy and are put forward in the spirit of which these policies were intended. They are appropriate to the location and well designed, and display sensitivity to the setting and modesty in aspiration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do you need to come back on anything, Ian? Okay, over to you, members. Councillor Southern. Can't wait to be asked. Councillor Southern.
So in principle, no objections to a dwelling going on this particular site. The issue over drainage is a massive issue around Mawdesley. It always has been, always will be. It's been alluded to that tests have been carried out to satisfy that. Ultimately, it all goes in the same place and it all ends up down Dark Lane. However, my issue with this particular proposal is its size. I know it's been taken from, it's the property over the road, which is actually shrouded by trees. And I just think, for me, it's overbearing and its scale's too big. If it was either smaller or a subterranean plot, absolutely fine. But I think where it sits there between the barn further down on Bluestone, and the property is to the right of there, I think it's overbearing out of scale. I'd actually propose that we refuse that on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor France.
I'd like to sort of propose the officer's recommendation, please.
Get the mic on. I think that gives you the wrong impression. Around it, as the various drawings and photographs have shown, are bigger properties. It does look ridiculously out of scale. It's just, I would say, it's just unfortunate that the house on the left, I would say, is unnaturally small. And so that just leaves that looking at it as a diagram gives the wrong impression. Given what's been said and the landscaping that's going to go on around it, and it's set back from the road a little, in fact quite a way, I think it won't be quite as overbearing as that gives the impression it will be. And I heard what Councillor Southerner said. Yes, there is flooding on Dart Lane, but given that the proper drainage is set out in this property, it shouldn't add to it. They can't solve the problems of the flooding occasionally on Dart Lane, but given the drainage scheme, it shouldn't, on the face of it, add to it. And just my own personal comment on it, I do wish people would stop using grey slate on their drives. They look very pretty when they start out, but you put your cars on it, they crumble within weeks and they're all over the road and everywhere else. So I can't quite understand people's love of this particular product, but that's got nothing to do with planning, but thank you.
Councillor Snow.
Well, I was just going to second the recommendation. I think it's fairly clear. I think Councillor Morwood has made some good points about the height as well.
Councillor Whittaker.
Thanks, Chair. When this first came up for outline plan revision, I proposed a site visit, and we had a site visit, and much to my dismay, it was approved, and we've got the details now. But the elevation that Councillor Moore just alluded to just shows it up, and even when it was approved, I didn't think we'd have a tall building like that doing as much overbearing as well. There's a reference to United Utilities. They never object to anything, ever. So I just think this is the wrong type. It says it fits in with the neighbourhood. It doesn't. The Highway Authority saying it's on a bendy road, as some of the pictures that are shown in the thing show. I just think it's not appropriate, Chair, in the present, and I shall be voting against it, Chairman.
Any more comments from anybody, or I'll move to the vote, because I have a proposer and a seconder, but, and I have just a proposal for refusal. Okay, let's move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So in respect of land west of One the Owls, Bluestone Lane, Mawdesley, members have decided to grant reserve matters permission in respect of erection of one detached dwelling, and that is subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. If anybody's just come for that application and they would like to go, please feel free. Tomorrow. Okay, moving on. Item 3C, land 100 metres north of Miller's Barn, Ulnes Walton Lane, Ulnes Walton, pages 81 to 102. Ian's going to present the item. Officer recommendation is planning permission is refused for the reasons outlined in the report. I've one registered speaker, the applicant Tony Broom. Okay, Ian?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission retrospectively for the erection of 3 stables buildings for private equestrian use on land 100 metres to the north-east of Miller's Barn at Ulnes, Walton. The application site is located in the Greenbelt, and prior to the erection of the stables, the site comprised open grassland pasture. In considering matters of principle, the framework sets out that the development of new buildings in the Greenbelt should be regarded as inappropriate, subject to a number of exceptions. The proposed development has the potential to engage with the exception to inappropriate development that supports facilities for outdoor sport and recreation. However, this exception is on the proviso that the development must preserve the openness of the Greenbelt and not conflict with the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt. Any new buildings in this location would inevitably have an impact on openness, as the site was previously free from development or buildings prior to the erection of the stables. As the development fails to preserve openness, it does not comply with any of the exceptions to inappropriate developments in the Greenbelt and is therefore harmful by definition. There is also additional harm to the purposes of including land within the Greenbelt that would be caused through encroachment. As the development will result in definitional harm to the Greenbelt and other harm, there would have to be very special circumstances to justify the grant of planning permission that would outweigh this harm. The applicant has advanced a number of benefits in support of the development. The benefits are set out in the report and comprise, in summary, that the stables are necessary for the successful breeding of miniature Shetland ponies, which takes place at the site. Foals have been lost prior to the development of the stables. Sick animals require shelter in order to recover from illness and injury. The shelter is required during periods of inclement weather for the animals, and the provision of appropriate shelter is essential to achieve acceptable levels of equine welfare and to complying with equine welfare legislation. Whether or not these benefits amount to the very special circumstances necessary to outweigh the harm to the Greenbelt and other harm is a matter of planning judgment and is for the decision maker to determine. In this instance, it's considered that even when weighted cumulatively, the applicant's case does not outweigh the substantial harm to the Greenbelt and other harm and would not amount to very special circumstances, which is contrary to the framework. It's therefore recommended that the proposed development is unacceptable. It's considered that the proposed development is unacceptable in principle, and it's recommended that planning permission be refused. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ian. Have I got Tony, please? Yeah, just press the button.
Oh, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I just wanted to come in person, really, just to sort of let you know that when I put these up, they are actually on skids. They were bought as movable structures. However, I did fail to move them in the 9 months that they've been up. The planning permission we're looking for is simply to remain them as movable structures. I'm not looking at actually fastening them to the ground. And I'm quite happy to accept a clause on there that says should they be redundant as their intended use, then we will remove them and put it back to the fields. It's a plea basically on animal welfare. I have 24 acres of land there. That's not just that one field. The shot from the gate down the track is the only viewpoint that you can actually see them in the distance. The rest is behind an 8-foot hedge. So although you can't argue there is a detriment to the Greenbelt, they are on the Greenbelt, it's so minimal, and I just feel that the animal welfare that I need on that site far outweighs what little impact it has on the Greenbelt. The application has been put to you all around the Shetland ponies. However, as you know, I do have other animals on there. I do have farm animals. I do have goats, sheep and alpacas. Currently, as we speak, the goats are in there now ready to kid. Without any shelter, I wouldn't be providing adequate welfare for them. As you can see, we've had a letter off the vet backing up that he's made numerous visits, and that actually on that site we do need somewhere for shelter. So if that isn't an adequate position, I'm willing to work with the council in any way. If you can, you know, if you would recommend them in a different position or a different shelter or something, you know, I'm quite willing to work with that. But you know, it's imperative that we have some form of shelter there, you know, for the animals' welfare. Like I say, we currently breed goats, we've got sheep to alpacas, as well as the Shetland ponies. So once again, it's just when I put them up, I didn't think I personally was doing anything wrong because they was movable, and I understood on 24 acres I could put something that could move. I understand now that perhaps if I'd have moved them more regular, it would have been different. But yeah, it's just you know, please consider the animal welfare needed to farm 24 acres of land without any building whatsoever, foodstuffs, medicines. You know, how am I meant to farm it? Thank you very much.
Ian, you wanted to come back.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just for members' benefit, although the buildings aren't attached to the ground, they're considered to be permanent structures because of the degree of permanence in terms of they wouldn't be moving around the field on a regular basis. They'd remain in situ for an unspecified period of time. So on that basis, they're considered to be buildings rather than some other form of development. Thanks, Chair.
Right, it's over to you, members. Councillor Platt.
Can I ask what might seem a daft question, but if this was a barn for cows, i.e. an agricultural building in an agricultural farm in a field, would the cows get a barn? And then the other question is, not too far away from here, someone has asked for a mobile home and got permission for that because it's classed as movable, even though it hasn't moved for many years and it's not looking like it's going to move. How would it stand if a mobile home was requested in this position?
Right, Ian.
Okay, yes, through you, Chair, thanks. So, yeah, in relation to the first point that you've raised, Councillor Platt, it would be a different assessment if the buildings had been proposed or erected for agricultural purposes. They're dealt with differently in relation to the green belt. So it is a different assessment. Now, obviously, if you are going to make an application for agricultural buildings, then you have to demonstrate that you actually need them for that particular agricultural operation that you're carrying out. So they should be proportionate to what you want to do. So, say you had 10 cows, it wouldn't mean that you could build, you know, a 60-metre long barn. It would need to be proportionate to your operation, but that is a different assessment to what we've got here, because this is equestrian development and it's not classed as agriculture. So the two things are treated differently. In relation to the second point about the mobile structure, it has got a temporary consent. That mobile building, well, it's not a building, mobile home has been placed on the land in connection with an existing agricultural operation. Sometimes agricultural operations require the farmer or whoever cares for the animals to live on the site. They would need to make a case as to why that should happen, and quite often a mobile home it's a test phase before we could look at an agricultural worker's dwelling. Lots of farms have permanent residents attached to them, but they have to demonstrate that there's a specific need for that worker to be resident on the site and that the business is viable. Having a mobile home there allows the business to develop, and in the meantime they may develop a business case. If the business fails, then the mobile home can be removed, and if it's granted on a temporary basis, then that would ensure that happens. But that's obviously a very different case to this. Thanks, Chair.
So just a very quick follow-up. To me, that sounded like if this was a 60-metre barn for cows, it would be okay, but because it's a smaller building, which looks a bit like a couple of sheds put together, but for horses, because it's equine, then it's a different set of rules for horses than cows, even though it's a much smaller scale item that's been put on that land. Okay, thanks.
Okay. I've got Councillor Snow, Councillor France. Did you have your hand up, Councillor Marwell?
Well,
Councillor
I
Sutton.
think Councillor Platt sort of clarified an issue. I just wondered why this wasn't considered as an agricultural development, because so far as I'm concerned, it looks very much like an agricultural development, and one, as Councillor Platt points out, that doesn't really have a massive amount of impact. And if the buildings could be moved, which is probable, it just seems a bit of a shame that we're going to destroy a business that might try and comply with our green belt policies here. And I'm finding it difficult to approve or disapprove of this application.
I hope to. Councillor France.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question really, Breen. If these stables had been moved in, would we be here now with this application?
Through you, Chair. It is a grey area with movable structures. So sometimes a field shelter, for example, might be on skids, and it may be moved around on a weekly basis because you may need to move it onto sort of a fresh area of the field. With these buildings, they're not readily movable in that you would just drag them around the field every week. They're built in such a way that you would expect them to remain in situ for an indefinite period of time. They're not easily movable, and there's no intention that they would be moved with any regularity. There's no statement that's been put forward saying they will be moved around X amount of time. And in addition to that, the scale of them isn't such that you could just pick them up and move them every week. So on that basis, the degree of permanence is such that they're considered to be a building, and they've been in that position since they were put there. So we can only really view them as buildings.
I do appreciate the hard standing would have needed planning permission, because that's a hard standing on Greenbelt. Thank you.
Councillor Marwood.
Thank you, Chair. I think officers, some members really are putting officers in a bit of a spot here and asking what if and what might have happened and what if. That's irrelevant, really. I have some sympathy with the applicant, but it can only work with what we've got in front of us. And basically, it's down to the old story of had that person and anybody would come to the officers planning and ask beforehand, they would have no doubt have been advised that this wouldn't be the best way of going about it. Perhaps you should think of agricultural buildings, etc. I'm sure that would have happened. But given what we have, I have to recommend we approve the recommendation. It's Greenbelt. The picture is obviously Greenbelt, and the rules are the rules. And you can't say, well, it's a bit smaller than than you'd like, and well, it's only a little bit worse than you'd like, and it's a bit further away. It's in the Greenbelt. It shouldn't be there. Those are the rules. Sadly, that's what we have to work with. But I suspect that if the applicant was to come back and say, look, whatever happens to these buildings prior to that, he will get some advice that would no doubt you can come back and something a little bit more useful could be put in place. You can't take on animals and then think, where am I going to put them? Surely it should have been the other way around. I've got to find somewhere to put the buildings there first and then bring in the animals. It seems to have gone back to front. Anyway, I'll leave it at that point. I've made the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'm going to say first off the bat here, I don't think there's any attempt to deceive here. I think this is a genuine example of somebody who thought, they're only a shed, it's not permanent, I could move them. and they're for my animals. So I don't think there's any malicious intent here or any attempt to deceive. As Councillor Moore was quite rightly pointed out, if you'll excuse the pun, we've got the shed before the horse. What he should have done was come to us and say, basically, you need to put some temporary shelter in there for the animals. I need to distribute medicine, etc. for them. What's the best way of going about it? Councillor Morwood's right in as much that this is what the rules we had before us. Now, there is a stipulation within this that if there are special extenuating circumstances, for instance, if they are a particular breed of horse that's, I don't know, is there any extenuating circumstances, what I'm asking here? And I think if Mr. Room was to come back to us with some extenuating circumstances as to why these should remain for the animals he's got there, it may well be as a planning committee, we could look on that favourably, Chair. Thank you.
Any more comments? I've got a proposal for officer recommendation which hasn't been seconded yet. You seconded, thank you. And it is difficult, but rules is rules, as we say, and it's about setting precedents. And if we did that, we've had similar applications in the past with stable, and we've had to refuse them for these reasons. So, anybody else wish to comment? If not, I shall move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to refuse planning permission in respect of the erection of 3 stable buildings for private equestrian use, retrospectively, and that is at land 100 metres northeast of Millersbourne on Ulnes, Walton Lane, Ulnes, and that is the reason identified within the actual report at page 69. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If you want to go, you can. Come and talk to our officer. That is what I would suggest. Right, 3C. Oh, 3D is not there, that's right. Item 3D has been withdrawn, so we're going on to item 3E. It is Apple Electrics, Blackhorse Street, page 115 to 128. Daniel's going to present this item. Recommendation permission in principle is granted subject to conditions, and I have no registered speakers. Over to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Chair. This application site is located in the settlement area of Chorley as identified by local plan policy V2 and is located at the northeastern corner of Blackhorse Street to the rear of Pall Mall. This application seeks permission in principle for 4 dwellings. Permission in principle is an alternative way of obtaining planning permission for housing-led development, which separates the consideration of matters of principle from the technical details of the development. Permission in principle has 2 stages. Stage 1 is permission in principle, which is what's in front of you today, and the second stage, if it was to be granted, will be technical details consent, which would fully assess the other matters for consideration. The site currently has several single-storey buildings consisting of timber sheds, brick-built buildings, and is accessed off Blackhorse Street. The wider character is residential to the west, consisting largely of 2-storey properties, with to the east of 2-storey commercial properties with flats above. Objections have been received to the proposal, but they are not for consideration at this time as they relate to matters outside of the scope of principle. Given the location of the site within the settlement of Chorley and for the reasons outlined within the report, the recommendation is of approval. Thank you.
Okay, over to you, members. Councillor Ainsworth.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I know the area well. I'm happy to propose officers' recommendations. I think it's good what they've put in front of us, and it's beneficial because it's from the town centre.
I'm happy to second the recommendation. I think it removes a little bit of an eyesore in an otherwise pleasant area and would massively improve the area.
Councillor Lowe?
Yes, I'm having good feedback tonight. I'm happy to go along with it because I know the area extremely well, and as the officer has said, this application is just for permission in principle, and it will come back when the technical details come for consideration, and it's the sort of scheme, in my opinion, that improves an infill area.
Thank you. Any more comments? If not, I'll move to the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So, committee have unanimously decided to grant permission in principle, subject to conditions in respect of application of Blackpool Street, Chorley. Thank you.
Thanks, Taz. Final last planning application is 153 Chorley Road, Adlington, pages 129 to 152 with an update on your addendum. Ian's going to present this item. The recommendation is to permit full planning permission, and I've no registered speakers. Over to you, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the change of use from a single dwelling to 4 self-contained apartments. The site's located on Chorley Road in the settlement area of Adlington, adjacent to the local centre and close to a range of amenities and public transport. There'll be no perceptible impact on the character of the area, as only very minimal external alterations to the building are proposed and no extensions. There'll be no adverse impact on neighbour amenity, as the property itself is already in residential use and would continue to be so. Off-street parking for 3 cars is proposed, which is 1 space less than the overall requirement. The location is, however, considered to be a sustainable one, and Lancashire County Council Highways raised no objection. No details of secure cycle parking have been provided, therefore a condition is recommended requiring a cycle parking scheme to be submitted for approval. Overall, the proposed development is considered to be in accordance with the policies of the development plan and is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the Section 106 agreement to secure a condition towards the off-site provision of public open space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe, Councillor Frank.
Thank you, Chair. Can I move the officer recommendation and just a minor clarification that the consultee should refer to Adlington Town Council rather than Adlington Parish Council, but I'm happy with all the relevant conditions. It's a vast improvement.
Seconded. I'd like the idea of a bike store being included. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to second it, but Councillor Francis jumped in there. Yeah, I mean, for the simple reason, visually bulk-wise from the outside, nothing's changed. It's a good use of a building there, and it puts more usable properties in there. Thank you, Chair.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. So members have decided to grant permission subject to conditions and Section 106 agreement in respect of the change of use from detached dwelling to 4 self-contained units at 153 Chorley Road, Adlington. Thank you.
Okay. Item 4 is the appeals report. Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Members are requested to note the contents of the appeals report. Members will note that the Council was successful in defending all the cases on this month's appeals report, and including an outline application for residential development of up to 130 dwellings on land 150 metres north-east of Paradise Street, which was dismissed by the Inspector. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Marwood.
You will be passing that on to Mr. Gould and saying, see, we do get it right all the time.
It'll definitely appear in the stats.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of that particular application, which was against non-determination, but I'm glad when it did come to committee that, if my recollection was right, we were minded before it went to appeal that if we had some say in it, we would have been minded to refuse it. So I'm happy and delighted for the residents that on this occasion the inspector has listened to local concerns.
Councillor Platt.
I was just going to say, well defended by the planning department.
Thank you. So thank you. Meeting closed, and have a safe journey home.